Pastor Jude had been standing by the door watching. "Leave my church," he shouted. His voice thundered through the empty hall. "Your church?" She laughed bitterly. "Since when did the house of God become your property?" That statement hit him like lightning. He rushed toward her and tried to drag her out, but she resisted. They struggled, and in the process, a candle stand fell, breaking loudly. The security guard ran in, shocked to see his pastor fighting a woman inside the church. Sir! What's happening?" he cried. But Pastor Jude didn't answer. He was shaking, breathing hard. The woman got up, dusted her gown, and said calmly, "The beginning of your fall has started." She walked out again, and that night, half the members received strange text messages. Each one said only 5 words. They said he was the kind of man every woman prayed for. Handsome, calm, full of grace, and born into the house of God. Pastor Jude, the only son of the late General Overseer of Heaven's Gate Assembly. Tall, chocolate-skinned, with neatly trimmed hair and a smile that could melt even the hardest heart. When he stood on the pulpit and raised his hands to pray, you would think angels themselves paused to listen. Every Sunday, the church overflowed, not just because of the Word of God, but because of him. Women came early, not for worship, but for the hope that Pastor Jude would notice them. Choir members fought over who would lead praise. Ushers wore their tightest uniforms. Even the media team had ladies who joined just to be close to him. If Pastor Jude walked past, whispers followed. "Look at those eyes. Ah, that smile. God really took his time on this one." Some said if you stared too long at him, you'd forget your prayer point. But despite all the attention, Pastor Jude never looked at anyone twice. No matter how they dressed, how they smiled, or how they knelt before him in tears, he always kept his distance. He was polite but cold, gentle but unreachable, and that was how his mystery grew. At 30 years old, Pastor Jude lost both his parents in a ghastly accident. The whole church mourned, but after the burial, the elders gathered and said, "Pastor Jude, you must take over your father's position as General Overseer." He agreed, but they added another condition. "It is not good for a man of God to lead the flock alone. You must get married." Immediately, something changed in Pastor Jude's eyes. He stood up from the meeting table, his voice sharp and strange. "I don't want a wife, at least not now." The elders were shocked. It was the first time they had seen him raise his voice. "But Pastor," one elder tried to speak. "No," he interrupted, slamming the table. "Please, just let me be." That moment left the elders confused and speechless. What kind of man, especially a pastor, didn't want a wife? Did he have someone already? Or was there something about his past no one knew? As weeks passed, rumors began to spread. Some said he had been heartbroken before. Others said he was secretly married abroad. A few even whispered that maybe, just maybe, he had a problem. But Pastor Jude never explained himself. He only smiled whenever the elders brought up the topic again. "Don't worry," he said softly. "I'll handle it." Yet nobody ever saw him with any woman. He lived alone in a big white duplex inside the church compound. He had no house help, no cook, no driver. He drove himself everywhere. Whenever church members tried to visit, the security guards would say, "Daddy said he's not receiving visitors today." Even the elders had to book appointments to see him. One of them, Elder Moses, complained bitterly. "This boy is hiding something," he told the others during a board meeting. "Since his father died, nobody enters his house, nobody eats with him, nobody even knows what he does after service." The other elders agreed, but none of them could prove anything. Meanwhile, the women of the church grew restless. Every Sunday was like a fashion show. Bright dresses, heavy perfumes, and wide smiles, all aimed at one man. There was Sister Blessing, who joined the protocol unit just to stand close to the pulpit whenever he preached, and Sister Faith, who claimed the Holy Spirit told her that Pastor Jude was her husband. Even the choir coordinator, Sister Anita, once fainted dramatically during service just so he would hold her. "But Pastor Jude," he didn't even blink. He helped her up, whispered a short prayer, and walked away as if nothing happened. The ladies were losing their minds. "He must be seeing someone secretly. No, maybe he took an oath to stay pure until rapture. Maybe he doesn't like women at all." The gossip spread beyond the church. Yet every Sunday the crowd grew bigger. Even unbelievers came just to see the handsome pastor who hated love. One rainy evening, the church elders called another emergency meeting. "Pastor Jude," Elder Moses began, You are now the general overseer. We can't allow rumors to destroy your image. Choose a wife and let us plan the wedding." This time he didn't argue. He only smiled, that same mysterious smile that revealed his perfect white teeth. "All right, elders," he said calmly. "If that is what you want, I'll think about it." The men of God were relieved, but they didn't know that Pastor Jude already had a plan, one that would shake the entire ministry to its roots. That night, as the rain poured heavily, the lights in his house stayed off. He sat alone by the window, staring into the dark sky. Lightning flashed across his face, revealing eyes filled with pain and something darker. Something like fear. He whispered softly to himself. "They'll never understand. They can't know the truth." Then he closed his eyes and sighed deeply. The thunder outside roared like judgment, but inside, Pastor Jude was at war, not with the elders, but with himself. And that was how the story of the pastor who fought all his members to hide his secret truly began. The following week, news began to spread like wildfire in Heaven's Gate Assembly. Pastor Jude has agreed to get married. Everyone was excited. Some women started fasting and praying secretly. Others started buying new clothes, hoping to be the chosen one. But one thing remained confusing. Pastor Jude didn't announce anything in church. He preached as usual, his voice calm and powerful as if nothing had changed. Yet after service, the whispers never stopped. "He's going to choose from the choir, I'm sure." "No, it will be someone from the media department. He always praises their work." "I've been praying. My dream last night showed he was wearing white. It means wedding." The competition among the ladies became war. Choir members no longer sang in harmony. Ushers fought over where to stand. Even cell leaders stopped praying together. But Pastor Jude was unmoved. He never reacted, never showed interest in any woman. He only smiled, preached, and returned home alone. One Sunday after service, the elders approached him again. "Son, you have not told us who the lucky woman is." He laughed softly. "Don't worry, elders. You will all know soon." But weeks passed and nothing happened. Instead, something strange began to occur. Some members said Pastor Jude no longer allowed anyone into his office. Others claimed he sometimes left the church at midnight and returned before dawn. A few said they saw him standing outside in the rain, praying alone under the streetlight. Whispers turned to rumors. Rumors turned to suspicion. And suspicion turned to gossip. Maybe he's into something we don't know. What if he's using charms to control the church? Ha! A pastor that hides his face from everyone? That's not ordinary. The gossip spread beyond the church walls. Bloggers began to write stories. Handsome Pastor Jude hides mysterious secret. Why does he refuse to marry? Could the man of God be battling demons? Meanwhile, Pastor Jude stopped attending elders' meetings. He sent messages instead. Even his assistant pastor, Brother Samuel, started to worry. One evening, Samuel decided to visit him without notice. When he arrived at the gate, the security man looked nervous. "Olga said nobody should enter." "But it's urgent," Samuel said. "Tell him I'm here." The man hesitated, but finally opened the gate. When Samuel entered the compound, everywhere was silent, too silent. He knocked on the door. No response. He tried again. Still silence. Then he noticed light coming from one of the rooms. He moved closer and peeped through the curtain. What he saw froze him. Pastor Jude was kneeling before a large mirror, his eyes shut tight, whispering something under his breath. It wasn't prayer, at least not one Samuel had ever heard before. The voice was deep, strange, like someone else was speaking through him. Samuel gasped loudly and the curtain moved. The next second, the light went off. "Who's there?" Pastor Jude's voice thundered from inside. Samuel ran. He didn't stop until he was out of the compound, panting like someone who escaped death. The next Sunday, Pastor Jude entered the church as usual, calm and composed. But he could feel the eyes on him. Everywhere he turned, people whispered. Some avoided shaking his hand. Others refused to sit close. During his sermon, he noticed the elders whispering among themselves. At one point, Sister Faith, the one who always claimed she had visions, suddenly stood up and shouted, "Man of God, confess! Whatever you're hiding, God has seen it." The congregation went silent. Even the microphone made a low humming sound as if afraid. Pastor Jude slowly turned to her. His voice was soft but carried authority. Sister Faith, if you have something to say, say it. She trembled. God showed me you're living in sin. You refuse to marry because of shame. Your secret will soon be exposed. Gasps filled the hall. The elders stood up, shocked. But instead of arguing, Pastor Jude smiled again, that same mysterious smile. If God has shown you anything, then may he reveal it to all, he said calmly. Then he turned back to his sermon, continuing as if nothing happened. But the damage had been done. The church was now divided. Some still believed in him, while others began to leave. Attendance dropped, offerings reduced, and bloggers published new headlines. Prophecy against Pastor Jude during live service. One night after midweek service, a group of youths gathered outside the church gate. We can't continue like this, one of them said. We must know what he's hiding. But how? We'll find a way to get into that house. They planned to sneak in at midnight. But what they didn't know was that Pastor Jude had been expecting them. That night, as they crept through the church compound, the lights suddenly came on, a bright, blinding like day. They froze. From the balcony, Pastor Jude stood, holding a Bible in one hand and a small black bag in the other. His voice echoed through the compound. Do you think I don't know what you've been saying? You all think I'm hiding something evil, but none of you can handle the truth. The youths trembled. One of them whispered, Sir, we were just— Leave, he thundered. Leave before the anger of God visits this place. They ran like madmen. From that night, nobody ever tried to enter his house again. The next Sunday, the elders met him privately. Pastor Jude, one of them said, this church is breaking apart. If there's anything you need to confess, please do. We will stand by you. He smiled faintly. There's nothing to confess, elders. I'm fighting my own battle. When the time is right, you'll understand. He stood up and left the room quietly. The elders looked at each other, confused, scared, and desperate. Something about Pastor Jude was not ordinary. Something was eating him from the inside. And the more they tried to help, the more he pushed them away. That night, as the city slept, a heavy wind swept through the church compound. The cross on top of the building rattled and fell. The sound echoed like thunder. From inside his dark room, Pastor Jude knelt again, whispering those strange words into the mirror. Then he looked up slowly, tears in his eyes, and said, Father, forgive me. I never wanted them to find out. But outside, the world was already watching, and soon everything he feared would come to light. That Sunday morning, the church was filled to the brim. The ushers had run out of seats, and the choir was already lost in worship. Everyone was singing, eyes closed, hands lifted. But all eyes were secretly waiting for one person, Pastor Jude. When he finally walked in, the atmosphere changed. His white suit gleamed under the lights, and his calm smile could melt the hardest heart. The women especially lost their focus. Some adjusted their wigs. Others wiped sweat off their faces like it was the anointing touching them. But that day, something strange happened. A young woman walked into the church. Nobody knew her. She wasn't one of the regulars who usually dressed to impress the pastor. No, this one wore a simple black gown and flat shoes. Her hair was tied back, and she carried a small Bible close to her chest. She walked slowly down the aisle, her eyes fixed on Pastor Jude like she'd seen him before. The ushers tried to lead her to the back, but she shook her head. I must sit in front, she said calmly. There was something in her voice, not pride, but power. They let her be. Throughout the service, Pastor Jude couldn't concentrate. His eyes kept meeting hers, and each time his smile faded. He tried to preach as usual, but he stammered, lost track of his words, and ended the sermon early. The congregation was shocked. Pastor Jude never cut his sermon short. After service, as people queued to greet him, the mysterious woman stepped forward. She didn't kneel or bow like the others. She simply looked at him and said softly, It's been a long time, Jude. Or should I say Pastor Jude? The people around gasped. The pastor's hands trembled slightly, but he forced a smile. I'm sorry. Do I know you? He asked. You know me, she replied, her eyes sharp as blades. And you know why I'm here. That was when he turned pale. He quickly signaled one of the ushers. Please escort her out, he said firmly. She's disturbing the peace of the house of God. But the woman didn't move. She only smiled. You can send me out, she said, but you can't send away your past." Everyone froze. The whole church fell silent. Then she turned and walked out quietly, leaving whispers behind her. Some said she was a mad woman. Others said maybe an ex-girlfriend. But nobody knew for sure. That night, Pastor Jude couldn't sleep. He paced the floor, sweating. He looked at an old wooden box he kept hidden behind his wardrobe. His hands shook as he touched it, then withdrew. "No, not now," he whispered. No one must know. By the next Sunday, rumors had already started. Church members whispered in corners, "Who was that woman? Did you see Pastor's face when she spoke? Maybe they had something before." The church elders called an emergency meeting. "Pastor Jude," the eldest man began, "this is not good for the ministry. The woman's words are causing confusion. We must find out who she is." But Pastor Jude only smiled faintly. "Don't worry, elder," he said. "I'll handle it." And he did. That week, every member who asked about the woman received a visit from the pastor himself. He told them softly that she was just a troubled soul, someone he once prayed for. He smiled, prayed with them, and they believed him. But one night around midnight, the mysterious woman returned to the church. The security man tried to stop her, but she told him, "Let me in. The truth must be revealed in the house of God." She walked straight to the altar and knelt, tears falling. "God," she cried, "forgive me if I am wrong, but this man has hidden his sins behind your name for too long." Unbeknownst to her, Pastor Jude had been standing by the door watching. "Leave my church," he shouted. His voice thundered through the empty hall. "Your church?" She laughed bitterly. "Since when did the house of God become your property?" He walked closer, anger and fear mixing in his eyes. "You don't understand," he said. "You don't know what you're doing." "Oh, I know," she replied. "And you know too. The blood you tried to hide still cries." That statement hit him like lightning. He rushed toward her and tried to drag her out, but she resisted. They struggled, and in the process, a candle stand fell, breaking loudly. The security guard ran in, shocked to see his pastor fighting a woman inside the church. Sir! What's happening?" he cried. But Pastor Jude didn't answer. He was shaking, breathing hard. The woman got up, dusted her gown, and said calmly, "The beginning of your fall has started." She walked out again, and that night, half the members received strange text messages. Each one said only 5 words. "Ask your pastor about blessing." By morning, chaos broke out in the church. People demanded answers. The elders were confused. And for the first time, Pastor Jude didn't come out to preach. No one saw him for days. His phones were off. The once calm, admired man had vanished. But the truth was only beginning to unfold. Because somewhere far away, in a small rented apartment, the mysterious woman was writing down everything, every secret, every lie, every soul that had suffered because of him. And the name on the first page was Blessing. For 2 Sundays, the great City of Light ministry remained silent. The pulpit was empty, the choir cold. The once joyful congregation had turned into a battlefield of rumors. Some said Pastor Jude had traveled for prayers. Others whispered he had been arrested. But those who saw his eyes that last Sunday knew something was deeply wrong. On the 3rd Sunday, he finally appeared. He looked different. His suit was wrinkled, his eyes heavy with sleepless nights. But the strangest thing was the silence that followed him. The crowd waited, expecting explanations. But instead, he began to sing. "Have mercy, O Lord. Have mercy." The microphone trembled in his hand. The more he sang, the more tears rolled down his face. Soon, he fell on his knees before the whole church. "I can't hide anymore," he said in a weak voice. "I have lied to you all. I have deceived myself and you," the church murmured. Some cried. Others looked lost. "What are you saying, Pastor?" one elder asked. "Let me speak," he replied softly. "Before the truth speaks for me." He took a deep breath, then began his story. Years ago, long before he became Pastor Jude, he was just Jude Okachukwu, a young man from a poor background. He was fiery, passionate, and desperate to make something of himself. His father, then the general overseer, had great hopes for him. But one night changed everything. He had fallen in love with a young choir member, Blessing. She was gentle, kind, and carried a voice that could melt the heavens. But there was one problem. His father disapproved. You can't marry a poor orphan, his father warned. God has chosen a different path for you. But Jude didn't listen. Their love grew in secret, and soon Blessing became pregnant. When she told him, Jude panicked. You can't keep it, he said, trembling. My father will disown me. The church will destroy me. She begged him, crying. Jude, this is our child. Please don't do this. But fear blinded him. One night he asked her to meet him by the river behind the church. He told her they would run away together. When she arrived, it was dark. Rain poured heavily, but instead of comfort, she found anger. Jude shouted, accused her of ruining his future, and in the heated argument, she slipped. He tried to grab her hand, but it was too late. She fell into the river, and she never came out alive. The entire church gasped in horror. Jesus Christ of Nazareth, an elder shouted. Is this true? Another cried. Pastor Jude nodded slowly, tears streaming down. I tried to save her, he whispered, but I couldn't. My father found out. And together we buried the truth. He paused, looking up at the cross hanging above the altar. He made me swear never to speak of it. He told everyone Blessing traveled abroad. When he died, I thought the curse died with him. But no secret stays buried forever. Then he raised his eyes, trembling. The woman who came here 2 Sundays ago, she was Blessing's younger sister. Gasps filled the air. Some people stood up, others wept. She said she would expose me, he continued, and I begged her to forgive me. But I see now, it's too late. He fell flat on his face before the altar, crying like a child. God, forgive me. Forgive me for hiding behind your name. The elders stood speechless. The once mighty man they adored was now broken, trembling in the dust. Then suddenly the doors of the church opened. The mysterious woman, Blessing's sister, walked in. The same black gown, the same quiet fire in her eyes. Everyone turned to her. She walked straight to the altar, stood beside the crying pastor, and said softly, You finally said it. The truth you buried. Jude lifted his head slowly, his face swollen from tears. I'm sorry, he whispered. I know, she said. I came here not for revenge, but for peace. My sister's soul can finally rest. She turned to the congregation. He was wrong, she said, but he's human. We all sin, but few confess. Let him find mercy where we found pain. Then she knelt beside him and began to pray. And for the first time, the entire church fell silent, truly silent. Weeks later, the church had changed. Some members left. Some stayed. Pastor Jude stepped down as general overseer and handed leadership to the elders. He spent his days visiting orphanages, widows and prisons, quietly serving, away from the stage and fame he once loved. One day someone asked him, Pastor, why do you still smile after everything? He looked up at the sky and replied, Because God didn't expose me to destroy me. He exposed me to set me free. They say time heals all wounds, but some wounds never close until truth is spoken. Pastor Jude lost everything. His fame, his church, his pride. But in the ashes of shame, he found the one thing he never had before. Peace. No matter how far you run, no matter how deep you bury it, truth always finds light, because in the end, the battle is never between man and his enemies, but between man and his own conscience. This is an African tale that reminds us, the truth we hide can one day hide us. No matter how long you hide a secret, truth has a way of finding light. And sometimes, that light is the only thing that can save your soul.